Hey folks, welcome in this new video. Today we will see something related to the career growth, and specifically we will see the differences between the staff engineer and the engineering manager paths. Before we jump in the actual content, let's take a look at the main resources that I used to make this video. As you can see here on the screen, we have the manager's path and the staff engineer's path. They are two amazing books and I think that every one of us should read them. But that being said, let's get started. First of all, let's talk about career progression for software engineers. Usually when you start your career after graduating or after finishing your bootcamp, you are a junior engineer. Then after a few years you will be a middle-level engineer, and then after a few other years you will be considered a senior engineer. Please keep in mind that years of experience are not a good metric to define whether you are a senior engineer or not, but usually are a good proxy. So you should have at least a few years of experience to be considered a middle level or a senior engineer, but the number of years of experience is not enough to consider you a senior engineer. But what happens after you're a senior engineer for a few years and you want to get more responsibilities? Well, at that point, you can make a lateral shift to management and you can become an engineering manager, or you can continue with the path of the individual contributor. You can then become a staff engineer and then a principal engineer, distinguished fellow, and so on and so forth. Please note that the names and roles really depends on your company, so you will find probably in different companies different names. Before we continue, let me say that working at the senior engineer level is perfectly fine for the rest of your career. So we usually work for 40 years, and working as a senior engineer for 30 years is perfectly fine. Maybe in your life you have different priorities, or maybe you don't want bigger responsibilities, because keep in mind that if you want to become a staff engineer or engineering manager, you will have a lot of more responsibilities, and as we all know, with great power comes great responsibilities. Now, who can benefit from this video? Well, I thought about this a lot, and I think that middle engineers and senior engineers will get the most from this video. If you're a junior engineer, it's probably fine to start to understanding how the career ladder works, but I suggest you to invest your time in studying other stuff and understanding how to become a better engineer and then a senior engineer. Okay, you may be asking, but why should I care about all this stuff? First of all, you should care because promotions in the tech industry often follows the anti-Peter principle that we will see in a few seconds. Then, choosing a career change like becoming a staff engineer or an engineering manager can have a huge impact on your personal growth and on your work-life balance as well. Last but not least, you should care about all this stuff because you will peek into your potential future in the next slides. But let's talk for a second about what is this anti-Peter principle. This is a principle which is often used in the tech industry, in tech companies, and is something like to get promoted to a certain role, you should already be performing the duties and responsibilities associated with that role. This means that if you want to become, let's say, a staff engineer, you should already be acting like a staff engineer, even if you don't have the role already. If you want to become a staff engineer, I suggest you to go in your company wiki and take a look at, okay, what are the responsibilities of a staff engineer? Make a self-review and understand, okay, what are the fields that I can improve to reach the staff engineer level before even asking for a promotion. This is really important in my opinion, because often a lot of people think, okay, I will just perform at my best, at my level, and then I will get promoted. Unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. We know that staff engineers and the engineering manager are two different roles, but as you may guess, they have a lot in common. So let's take a look. First of all, broader scope over the organization. If you are a senior developer, you will probably have a team, a project, so you are working usually just on one thing. You have your scope, but when you are a staff engineer or an engineering manager, usually your scope is a bunch of teams or even the entire organization, depending on your seniority. So you will not work just with one team, but usually with multiple teams. Another thing that is really interesting to me is that these roles are usually different from company to company. For example, in some companies, engineering managers are required to work on the code actively at least for 50% of their time, and in other companies they even don't write a single line of code. So since they are so different from company to company, I suggest you, before applying for a staff engineer or an engineering manager role to read carefully the job description. Also, inside the same organization, if it is a really big company, maybe you can find that two staff engineers of the same level are doing completely different things. Right, so maybe one staff engineer is responsible for one department or one product, and one staff engineer is responsible for, I don't know, the infrastructure, the overall infrastructure of the company. So it can really vary a lot. This led us to the third point here, which is that usually those roles have a less defined set of tasks. When you are a software engineer, more or less you know what to expect. Maybe you are working on the front end, so you have to create new components, you have to create new page, you have to work with the designers. So you have kind of a set of tasks that you have to accomplish in order to succeed. But when you are a staff engineer or an engineering manager, since your scope is usually broader, even the set of tasks that you will do is way broader. Then a really important thing, which is that both the positions are leadership positions. Even if the staff engineer is not actively managing people, so they do not have direct reports, they still have a huge leadership position. Last but not least, in both roles, communication is probably one of the most important skills. Staff engineers, of course, will work on the code, but they will also mentor other engineers. They will also delegate a lot of work to other engineers. They will create a lot of design documents. They will do a lot of code review. When you are a staff engineer, probably you will spend a lot of your time communicating with others, both with code reviews, mentoring, teaching, helping others, and so on and so forth. Now that we saw a few things that they have in common, let's see the differences. Let's start by talking about the engineering manager. The first duty of the engineering manager is usually driving the team vision and the strategy, not specifically from a technical point of view, but in relation with the business needs. For example, let's say that the business requires to become, I don't know, ISO compliant. The engineering manager with the staff engineer and all the engineering teams will work together to create the strategy to accomplish that result. The engineering manager also manages team dynamics and performance. Engineering managers are responsible, for example, to make performance reviews, which can happen usually once per year or twice per year, depending on your company policies. They also conduct one-on-ones, usually with their direct reports, and they try to resolve conflicts inside the team as well. Engineering managers are also accountable for allocation and hiring, so they evaluate if a team is understaffed, they allocate budget for the new resources to join the team, offer the team's training. Generally speaking, they do everything which is needed for the team to succeed. They are also responsible for the main part of the communication with external stakeholders. Let's say they can, for example, set up one weekly meeting with all the stakeholders. They can set up together with the product manager, if there is a product manager, I don't know, the Kanban board to evaluate the status of the project, and so on and so forth. Then, last but not least, the engineering manager is also responsible for the professional growth and development of its own direct reports and usually of an entire team. If the engineering manager recognizes a mismatch between the current skills of the team and the skills needed to success, they will both allocate training budget, find training resources, and provide everything to the team. As we said before, usually engineering managers, depending on the company, can also write some code. Staff engineers, on the other side, are really more technical related. So first of all, they provide technical leadership and strategic decision making. Let's say that they foresee that in the next 2 years, the company will have a need for, I don't know, a new scalable database system. They will start to evaluate all the possible options and they will create the strategy to reach the goal of having a scalable database in the next years. Second thing, they will facilitate the mentorship and the skill development for the team. As we saw before, also the engineering manager is responsible for this. But they are slightly different because if the engineering manager can give some training resources, the staff engineer, since he's usually more hands-on, can teach also by showing how to do things and mentor people in the team, then ensuring cross-team collaboration and consistency. Before we talked about the scope of the staff engineer and we saw that staff engineers usually work across multiple teams, so they are also responsible for the communication between multiple teams. Then overseeing system design and architectural integrity. A staff engineer thinks in the long run, so they will try to foresee what they need in 5 to 10 years. They know that every single architectural choice that they make will have an impact on the future of the product. Then, of course, promoting continuous learning and leading innovation. As we will see also later, staff engineers, since are individual contributors, are usually role model for developers. So they need to promote to the entire team all the good practices of the industry. Okay, now you have a basic understanding of the differences between staff engineer and engineering manager. But you may be thinking, okay, how can I choose what I want to do in the next years? Unfortunately, this is not an engineering problem. This is a design problem, which requires different tools, different methodologies. An engineering problem is usually a problem where you have a variable that you can maximize. That's not the case, unfortunately. I would love to suggest you this book, Design Your Life, is a great book extracted from a Stanford course and is definitely worth reading it. Okay, but what should I do in practice to understand what I would like to do in the near future? My advice here is prototype as much as you can. You can use shadowing session, you can ask for mentoring both to staff engineer and engineering managers. You can make interviews with them to ask them how their job looks like, what they like about their job, what they hate about their job. The real question here is, do I really need to choose? Well, that's not always the case. No, you don't need to choose because you can go back and forth like a pendulum. As you can see in the slide, there is a link to a great article that describes exactly why we shouldn't choose or why we don't even need to choose, because you can go back and forth from engineering to individual contributor, back and forth multiple times in your career. And this will help you a lot because your technical skills will stay sharpened over the time, and you will also learn a lot of managerial skills which are really helpful even if you are an individual contributor. Now let's take a look at how reading the manager's path can help you in your day-to-day job. If you're watching this video, most probably you are an individual contributor and you have a manager. Reading this book, even from the first pages, will teach you what to expect from your manager and also how to conduct effective one-on-ones with your manager. After I read the pages about one-on-ones in this book, I really understood what I was doing wrong, and from that point in time my one-on-ones went really better. Another important topic is how to be managed effectively by our manager. How should we communicate with our manager? How should we help her? Then there is a great chapter about how mentoring works. You will learn a lot of things about mentoring and I really liked it. And also you will learn how the management ladder works. So if you may be interested in becoming an engineering manager, please definitely take a look at this book because you will find a lot of useful things. If you're a middle-level engineer, maybe you may think that a few things in the second part of the book are slightly far from you because the author here talks a lot about managing a team, managing multiple teams, managing managers, and then manage an entire organization. So it can become a little bit abstract. On the other side, let's see how reading the staff engineer's path can help you in your day-to-day job. Since we are individual contributors and this book is about being a top-notch individual contributor, all of us can benefit a lot from reading this book. In the next few slides, I will show you some interesting concepts that I found in this book. First of all, we will see an entire section about understanding the big picture. Inside the book, you will find the description of 3 maps. The first one is the locator map, so where you are inside the organization, what is your scope, what are your boundaries, what is near to you, and so on and so forth. Then we have the topological map, which is actually how can we navigate through the organization, what is the company culture, is the company a top-down company, a bottom-up company, so we will learn more or less how to navigate into the terrain. The third map is the treasure map, which describes where we are going and why we want to go there. Another topic that I loved about this book is that you will learn how a staff engineer defines a technical vision and strategy. Just to give you a few definitions, a vision is a future shared reality, and the strategy is a series of applicable things that we can do to reach that vision. There is also a really fun example called SockMatcher, and you may guess what this platform is for. The book tells that our time is finite. unfortunately. And this is true for staff engineers, but also for all the other engineers. And there is a really long section that explains you how to do a little bit of resource management. By resources here we mean energy, credibility, skills, quality of life, and social capital. You should find an equilibrium between all those resources. For example, let's say that you have a really interesting project which will give a boost to your credibility, which will improve your skills, but is consuming a lot of your energy. In this scenario, you probably don't want to pick up another huge project which will finish all your energy. You will probably pick a really small project, something that maybe can give you energy, if that is possible. Also, I think that this section is especially beneficial for all the engineers from the middle level up to the, I don't know, principal plus level, which is how to lead a project. If you're a middle developer, maybe you're working on a niche feature and you can see that feature maybe as a tiny project. You can apply everything you learn inside this section of the book also to that tiny feature. You will learn, for example, the life of a project, building context, so what are the goals, what are the customer needs, what are the success metrics, all the constraints and so on. Then you will learn how to define the project structure. In that case, probably a project manager or a program manager already did it for you, but you may be involved in defining the roles, estimating the times, agreeing on the scope, and so on. After that, there is an entire section about driving the project to success. Bonus point for this section because you will learn how to write an effective RFC, and I really liked this part. Last but not least, act as a role model. At the staff level, people will assume you know what you're talking about. And even if this stuff is not always applicable, in my opinion, for all the developers, you can benefit a lot by reading it. After this section, there is another section about good influence at scale that tells you how to have good influence through advice, teaching, act as a guardrail, and generate opportunities for the developers in your team. Let's recap what we learned in this video. First of all, we saw one potential career progression. Then we learned how the Antipeter principle work. Then we saw the responsibilities of each role. We saw the differences between the engineering manager and the staff engineer, what they have in common. Then we had an introduction about how to choose your next role. And we also saw how you can benefit from reading these books. Before we jump off, let me give you a few other gifts. First of all, the culture map. This book will help you a lot if you work in a multicultural environment because we'll teach you all the differences between all the cultures, and trust me, you will not regret reading it. Then, if you decided and you're sure that you want to become an engineering manager, become an effective software engineering manager, it's probably the book for you. You will find step by step how to be a great engineering manager. Last one is one of my favorite books. It's like the Bible for all product managers, but I am quite sure that also developers can benefit a lot from reading it. If you're working in a product company or if you're working on a product, actually, having a broader understanding can really help you to be an effective developer. Now, you may be asking, okay, what's next? Apart from everything we saw today, please keep in mind that you own your career. We will work for so many years and there is no such a thing like a standard path. You can change your job as many times as you want, and since the work is a huge part in our life, please enjoy the process. Enjoy what you're doing, enjoy the people around you, and if you can, have fun with your job. Thanks a lot for watching this video and I will see you soon. Cheers!